Good morning. This is Valerie Leonard. I am the founder of Nonprofit Utopia. I want to say thank you so much for joining me, taking time out of your schedule. If you are watching us, please indicate your name, where you're from, and if you have any questions, feel free to post. If you are watching us, please indicate your name, where you're from. Okay, bear with me. I had had two instances going. Again, please indicate your name and where you're from. And if you have any questions, please feel free to post. For those of you who have been following us, you know that this is Social Enterprise Month in the Nonprofit Utopia community. We are showing people how they can go through the process of creating a social enterprise if this is indeed something that they want to do. And as we know, a nonprofit by definition is a social enterprise. We're going to show you how to formulate a for profit business and work that with your nonprofit. So that's how we're going to spend this entire month. We started off by showing you how to assess your readiness for starting an, a social enterprise. And then yesterday we showed you how to do the research. And then today we're going to show you how to formulate a value proposition. And as you will see, it is more than more to it than meets the eye. All right. So without further ado, I am going to share my screen and we will go into our presentation. Alrighty, so we are going to talk today about how to conduct research. Okay, this is the wrong presentation. I do apologize. Alrighty, just one moment. All right. All right, so I do apologize. I had the wrong presentation up. All right, so as I indicated before, we're going to talk about how to formulate a value proposition for your social enterprise. And as I also indicated, there is more to it than meets the eye. All right, so before we start, let's think about some questions, right? Why should we buy from your business as opposed to another business? All right, whether you are a nonprofit or a for-profit venture, you got to articulate how you're different. And it's not just a matter of saying how you're different. You really have to make an informed judgment as to how you're different. That's going to take some research. It's not just a knee-jerk reaction. And we're going to show you how to develop your value proposition going through a process, right? So you're going to learn how to answer the question, why should we buy from you as opposed to from another business? We're going to talk about how to communicate your unique value proposition to investors, clients, and funders. And then we're also going to tell you how to develop your products, service, and programs that your customers want, as opposed to developing something, building it, and hoping and praying that they will come. All right, and then we're going to show you the relationship between your business model and your unique value proposition. All right, so I just want to acknowledge that the material from this workshop, so to speak, is based on the value proposition design created by Austin Walder, Yves Pigneur, Greg Bernarder, and Alan Smith. They're all from Strategizer. And here's our working definition of unique value proposition. It's a bundle of products, services, and programs that create value for a customer segment. And that is from the book. And more simply, the set of benefits that you design to attract customers. All right. So notice this is benefits and not features. Sometimes we get caught up in all the fancy features that may or may not be valued by the people that we're trying to sell. We really want to make sure that our customers are in a better position after they use our products and services than they were before. All right. And that's what creates the value. All right. So, how do you respond when somebody asks you, why should I do business with you as opposed to with your competitor? And some of the knee jerk reactions are, we tell them what makes us different from the competition. And really, in many instances, when we talk about how we're different, we're talking about a very, very surface knee jerk reaction, right? And it may or may not tap into the very core of what's important to our clients, right? So we talk about our products, we talk about our services, we talk about our programs, the features, blah, 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 blah. And all of this is usually couched in terms of what we do, what we think is important. Remember, in many cases, we build something hoping that people will come. So when we think about a unique value proposition, is not so much what we think people need, right? It's not so much what we think is important. It's not so much what we quote unquote know is important, right? It's a promise of value to be delivered, communicated, and acknowledged. It's also belief from the customer about how value or the benefit will be delivered, experienced, and acquired. So, in other words, it's all about the customer's perspective and not ours. So a value proposition needs to be relevant. It needs to have quantified value. It needs to have unique differentiation. So when we talk about relevancy, it's going to be a clear statement that explains how the product solves the customer's problems or improves their situation. So basically, you're talking about transformation. What has changed for the customer as a direct result of using your product or service? It delivers specific benefits, and that's where the value comes from. And it has unique differentiation, right? It tells the ideal customer, not just any customer, but your ideal customer, why they should buy from you and not the other guy. So here is what a value proposition is not. It's not about us. Remember, it's not about a list of things that we do. It's not about the features of our products, programs, and services. Remember, the features, as well as their design, they don't always create value, right? And again, when we talk about what we do and our capabilities, that's important. But really what the customer thinks about is how are you going to solve their problems? So put yourself in the customer's shoes. After you have selected your customer segment, you're going to look at how they go about their everyday lives. What types of jobs they have, what problems are they trying to solve, what are their pains? And when we talk about pains, what are some of the things that frustrate them on a day to day basis? What are their gains? What are the things that they're aspiring to? And then you're going to prioritize those jobs, pains, and gains. And I know this sounds scientific, and you're probably wondering, why does it take all of that? It takes all of that so that you can get to the core of what is really driving your customer, and you're not relying on what you think the problem could be. So this slide here focuses on the customer profile, and this is the left side of a canvas that will help you to determine the value. So before you can create value for the customer, you need to really understand what's going on in the customer's mind. So what are some of the customer jobs? If you are selling products like clothes, you want to think about what that customer's lifestyle is. How are they living on a day-to-day basis, right? What's important to them? What are they trying to achieve in life, right? And how do those clothes communicate that they're achieving it, right? Um, a customer job could literally be what they do on a day-to-day basis, right? So you have to get into, again, the mind and the psyche, the routine of what your customer is doing. And when your customer goes about his or her everyday living, his or her everyday job, what is it that they're trying to achieve? So those are the gains. What are their goals, right? What are their objectives? And then you look at their pains. What are the pain points? What frustrates them? What causes problem? What's the irritant? What keeps them from actually enjoying their job or achieving those gains? So when we talk about the customer jobs, we're looking at what the customer does on a day-to-day basis. So that could be living on a day-to-day basis. That could be actually a specific job. So what is it that they're trying to achieve? What are the tasks that they're involved in? What problems are they trying to solve? What's important to them? And what are their priorities, right? So the only way you're going to know this information is from actually talking to the customers and or doing surveys and focus groups. All right, so some of the trigger questions that you can use for the jobs is, for example, what's the one thing that they couldn't live without accomplishing, right? So, what's the one thing in their day to day job that they're trying to achieve, or what's the most important thing, right? And if they don't do it, they could literally lose their job. So, what are the stepping stones that can help them achieve this key job? And what are the different contexts that your customers might be in? So, again, that could be a program manager, that could be a consumer who wants a good meal, that could be a teenager who wants to be the best dressed in the class, that could be someone who is working for a company where they have to have a uniform that not only is clean, but it also provides safety, right? So, those are things you need to take into account. And how do their activities and goals change depending on the context? And again, context is, what's the situation? So when we look at customer pains, what is it that annoys them before, during, and after getting a job done? What are the barriers to doing the job? And your job is to identify three types of customer pains, how it impacts them, and how they prioritize the pains, right? And you got to be specific, right? And then understand how your customer prioritizes these pains. Again, from the outside looking in, we might think our customers want X, but what they really want is Y. So again, you got to get into their heads and know that your products and services are really not so much the product and service itself, but it is a solution to a problem or pain that they have. All right. So customer can pains can be they can be functional. All right. So again, what they're doing, the product they're using, the food they're eating, it's not working for them, right? It could be emotional. The task makes the customer feel bad every time he or she does it. It's annoying. It's annoying to go to the store for this. It's ancillary. And task and outcomes that customers don't like, right? So it might be a particular graphic design that they don't like, but that's going to change from situation to situation. Bottom line is there are a number of undesired outcomes that you have to try to get to the bottom of. And it's important for you to get to the bottom of these so that you can design products that can help them with these problems. Another thing you need to look at is the obstacles. What keeps your client from getting started with the job? And when we're talking about a job, we're not necessarily talking about employment per se, but we're talking about a major task that they need to do on their jobs. All right. So, what keeps them from meeting their goals and objectives? And some of the examples include not having enough time, not having enough money, not having the capacity or the skill level in order to do it. Another thing that your customer is thinking about is what are the risks? What are the risks of changing over from the current solution or the current way of doing things to this new solution that you're proposing? So before you even think about that, you need to think about the job that they're in and think about what are the things that could possibly go wrong as they're going through their day that will keep them from achieving their goals and objectives for that day. What are some of the negative consequences? For example, it could be a security breach, it could be a cost overrun, it could be a loss in credibility. Again, that's going to vary from situation to situation, and here are some typical trigger questions that you might want to ask your customer. And you can ask these questions through a focus group, through an interview, through a survey, and just really get an understanding for what your ideal customer might think. All right. So, how do your customers define too costly? Is too costly for them losing a client, right? Is too costly for them losing their job? Is too costly for them losing their reputation? What makes your customer feel bad? Is it, you know, the failure that they might incur? How are current value propositions underperforming, right? So they might be doing their jobs a certain way. They might be using a certain product or service. They may not necessarily be entirely happy with that product or service. So your job is to really understand what it is that makes them unhappy with that product, service, or even their current approach. They might not even be using a product or service to solve their problem. They may be trying to do this on their own, right? But they're not having success. What are some of their greatest challenges, right? And then on the flip side, we're looking at the gains. Again, those gains are those things, that people are aspiring to, right? They're aspiring to a certain result, right? The outcomes and the benefits. Some of the gains are required, meaning they absolutely have to have these things, right, in order for them to be satisfied or to buy, right? There are certain gains that are expected, at a very um, basic um, level. What are you expecting your product to do? What is desired, right? What's on their wish list? What's unexpected? How have you exceeded their expectations? So the required gains, again, these are those things that are absolute, and you know, they actually would not buy your product, you know, if if you didn't have these features that didn't work, right? So for example, one of the most basic expectations of a cell phone is that you can make a phone call. If you don't have a product that you call a cell phone that can make a that can make a phone call at the very minimum, then that's of no value to your customer. What's expected? Again, these are relatively basic, but these are things that we should have even if the solution could work without them. So another example is the cell phone, right? At a very minimum, you're expecting to be able to make a call, but it's gotten to a point where it's almost a standard feature to have a camera. So if you don't have a camera on that phone, then it just doesn't seem as good as the next product, right? So Apple is the cause of all of this, right? They- And then also you notice too that phones make a fashion statement right about now. So if your phone doesn't look a certain way, then you're stigmatized by your peers, and that becomes part of the selling point for some of those phones. The desired gains go beyond our expectations. They're kind of they're gravy, so to speak. And these are also the things that customers might come up with. They might say, well, what if we did this? What if we did that? So, for example, smartphones being seamlessly connected with your other devices, connected with your tablet, connected with your computer, and all of that good stuff. So that's a desire, and it those designs actually came out of the desires that customers have. And then the unexpected gains are those things that go beyond our expectations, again, a little bit higher. And then they're probably things that are imagined at this point. An example of that is the Apple touchscreens, the Apple App Store. And now that is just basically commonplace and standard. All right, so here are some questions that you can ask to make sure that you understand, what your customer's trying to achieve. So what savings would make your customers happy? What savings in terms of time, money, and effort would they value? What quality levels do they expect? And what would they wish for more or less of? How do current value propositions delight your customers? So that could be, when we talk about current value propositions, that could be a current consultant they're working with, a current product that they're buying, or it could just be a current way of doing things that might not necessarily be the most efficient, but you have a better way of doing something that, so you can help their lives in their business be better. Which specific features do they enjoy? It's important to know that features are good, but features are not the value, right? They can be important, they can be useful, but you have not created value unless money changes hands, right? So, what performance and quality do they expect? What would make your customers' jobs or lives easier? And could there be a flatter learning curve, more services, or lower costs of ownership? All right. So if you have any questions, please feel free to post. I'll check when we're done. So when we look at completing the customer profile, right? After you go through the exercise, how would you rank your customers' jobs, pains, and gains? So you're going to do really a brainstorm around this, and you're going to focus on those things that you think are the most important to, not to you, but to your potential clients. And then you want to also, at that point, you should have enough information to be able to describe your ideal customer. You'll be able to talk about what he or she experiences on a day-to-day basis in their job. You should be able to talk about, what it is they're trying to achieve, and talk about some of the barriers that they have in order to achieve that. So what does he or she do for a living? What are his or her challenges? And then what are their desired outcomes? All right. So when we look at the value map, this is the left side of the value proposition canvas. And you do this not first, because this is all about you and your business, right? But you shouldn't think about you and your business until you really understand the customer, and you understand what hurts the customers. You understand what your customers are trying to achieve, and you understand, what they're going through on a day-to-day basis. So as we create value, we're creating products and services that are going to be gain creators, right? And when we talk about game creators, these are going to be things that help make their lives easier. We're going to talk about pain relievers, right? So that's going to be taken into account. And then as a result of, you know, taking into account what they're trying to do, what they're trying to achieve, and what hurts them, at that point, you're going to develop products and services that will make their lives easier. Okay, so some of the sample trigger questions. What quality levels do your customers expect, and what would they want more of? What would make your customers' lives easier? What positive social consequences do your customers desire? So one way to get to the answer of these questions, you can uh, have similar questions on a survey that you have for your potential clients, or ideal clients to answer. You could ask these same questions in an interview. You can ask the same questions in a focus group. But remember, when you're doing your focus group should be comprised of people who have similar backgrounds, have similar problems that they're trying to solve. All right. And then next, we're going to talk about pain relievers. And you want to describe how your products, services, and programs are going to relieve specific pains. And then you want to provide a specific outline of how you intend to eliminate or reduce some of the things that annoy them most, right? So these are things that they run into during the course of their job, um, during the job, or even after the job. And now, when we talk about the best value propositions, they want to focus on the most extreme pains, and they don't necessarily have to have a pain reliever for every identified pain. And then you want to focus only on the few pains that the solution alleviates very well. So if you can't do this at least as well and eat preferably better, you really want to enter into the space where the products and services that you're providing are better than your competition. So if you can't do a better mousetrap than they can, then you might not, you might consider not focusing on that particular value proposition. You might want to focus on other value propositions. All right. So when we look at game creators, you want to talk about how your products and services create customer gains. Again, how do you help your clients to solve their problems? You want to specifically outline how you intend to produce outcomes and benefits that your customer expects. So remember, when we talk about outcomes, we're talking about what changes you're going to make, what's going to be the transformation for your client. If you're providing a service, what's going to change for them? What will they be able to do after using your product or service that they can't do already? When we talk about benefits, of what use is it to them? Not necessarily how good the product works, not necessarily the feature. We're not necessarily talking about the bells and whistles on the product, but when we talk about benefits, we're talking about those things that actually is going to make a difference to your customer in the way they do their jobs. All right, so those things could be, functional utilities, social gains, and positive emotions and cost savings. All right, when we look at our products, services, and programs, you want to list what your nonprofit does, right? And then if you're going into the social venture space where you're actually creating a new business, right? You want to look at, the things that you offer. So these could be physical products. So you could be in the business of actually manufacturing a product or service, right? It could be an intangible benefit. It could be copyrights, trademarks, service marks, goodwill, programs, and services. These are your intellectual property that will help, differentiate you in the market, and people will find them to be of value, right? Um, your your business could offer digital products. This could be digital downloads. So it could be downloadable books, downloadable music, podcasts, courses, and all of that good stuff. And then financial. investment funds and financial services. So when you put everything together, you're going to come up with a value proposition canvas. So again, on the right side, what you do first, you're examining what's going on in the mind of the customer. You're looking at what the customer does for a living or how he or she lives his or her life. It, all depends on the product that you're creating or the service that you're creating. And then you want to look at what they're trying to achieve and then look at what frustrates them. And in answer to what's going on with your client, you're going to create a product or service that takes into account what they're trying to achieve. So your product or service is going to include gain creators. It's going to look at the pains of the customer. So you're going to create pain relievers, and those gain creators and those pain relievers together are going to inform the actual product and service that you are going to provide. And just think of it too, if we were looking at a strategic plan, right, we're looking at the problems that are going on in the community, and then we're providing products and services that will address those issues. So the same is true in social enterprise. So your real value comes about when your customer jobs, pains, and gains are aligned with the gain creators, pain relievers, and products and services. So this is real value. And then the way that you know that this is value, the proof is in whether or not people will buy it. Remember, things can be useful, things can be needed, but if our customers are not buying, if they don't want it, you have created no value, even though you have created a useful product. All right. So here is a sample value proposition canvas, and this is for a book that Strategizer put together. But before they said that they were going to do a book, they actually took the time to assess, what's going on with their ideal customer. All right. So their customer segment is a business book reader, right? And then their value proposition, they use the value proposition design methodology in the book. All right. And then, the next couple of slides, you'll see what they're referring to. All right. So what they did, and before they even thought that they would do the book, again, they thought about the value proposition. And just like, we're looking for our strategic plans, we can assess different strategies to solve the same problem. The same is true for the value proposition. What's important is you have a value proposition, and then the product or service can be one of several ways that you can address to create value and address the problem. So when they looked at their customers, they started out with the customer jobs. And then they also got into the psyche of their customer. So one thing that the customer desires is to look good in front of their colleagues, with their boss, with their client. They also wanted to improve the skill set and advance their careers. They wanted to make things that people want rather than just making things and hoping they would come. And then they wanted to be able to find, learn, and apply those methods. They wanted to improve or build a business. They wanted to communicate their ideas very well. And then they wanted to be able to make their decisions with confidence. All right. So when we look at what these particular customers wanted to achieve, they wanted to be able to create results. They wanted something that was easy to understand. They wanted to be able to have a product that will help them actually do their jobs better because they have information that could be easily applied to what they wanted to do. They wanted clear indicators to know that they were moving forward. They wanted something that would help them communicate their ideas. They also wanted something that would lead to better collaboration with people, in their workplace as well as with their clients. And they wanted a product that would help them connect with like-minded people. All right. And then when we look at the pains, they wanted something that would help them do their jobs. But as you can see, this format and sometimes the language we use is very, very theoretical. So they didn't want a solution that would be too much theory. If they wanted theory, they would go back to school, get their MBAs. They didn't have a whole heck of a lot of time. They didn't want to make things nobody wanted. They didn't want to deal with risk and uncertainty of trying something new and it would fail. They didn't want to go down the wrong path. They didn't want to waste time with ideas that don't work. They didn't want boring content that's hard to work through. And then they didn't want to have a product where they couldn't really see how it was applicable to what they're doing, and therefore they would be wasting their time. All right. So again, this is what's going on in the minds of their customer. How did they know what's going on in the mind of their customer? They talk to them. They, meaning the authors of this book and the consultants, they talked to the customers. They did interviews. They did surveys, right? They didn't make assumptions about what it is they wanted. All right. So with the customer in mind, they then begin to develop a product. But before they develop the product, right, they had to think about what can we do to create a gain for them? How can we help our potential customers actually achieve their goals, right? So we want to create something that's going to help them shape their ideas. We want to have step-by-step instructions to get them started, right? We want to give them access to advanced material. Once they master what we have to share with them, we want to be able to take them to the next level. We want to help them understand what matters. We want to create or help them create products that customers want. We want to share with them a proven and effective suite of tools. We want to share with and learn from their peers. We want to help them with that. We want to give them a shared language so they can communicate. And we want to enable practice and skills assessment. And we also want to have software supported methodology. So these are the answers to their problems, and their answers could take on many forms in the form of a product or service. So one of the things they created was a value proposition canvas. That's what you see here. They also created a book. They created online exercises and tools and templates. They created an online course. They created an app. They have exclusive online companions. All right. So all of these things together create value for the customer, and they were able to create the products and services that would create value. So one of the products that they created was the value proposition design. There's a whole book that shows you how to create a value proposition. In fact, this presentation is based on this book. And after going through the process that I just shared, they came up with the following value proposition. Our book helps business professionals who want to improve or build business by avoiding making stuff nobody wants and creating clear indicators to measure progress. Okay, so this is one of the ways they created value. And this is one of the customer segments. So when you're dealing with developing your value proposition, you're going to need to develop a value proposition for every one of your customer segments and every one of your products. And they may be similar, but not exactly the same. You want to create something of value that's going to speak specifically to the person who is looking for a specific solution. So here is a sample formula for writing a value proposition. If you're in the Nonprofit Utopia community, we have worksheets that you can work through to develop your value proposition. We also have those canvases for you to work through as well. So in a nutshell, here's the formula. Our products and services, and you can fill in the blank, helps whatever customer segment who want to do whatever they're trying to get done by, and then you include your own verb. So the verb could be reducing, it could be avoiding, and then you can have and then your own verb. You can have increasing or enabling, and not to say that whatever you come up with is going to be exactly like this, but this is, a formula. So basically, you want to be able to develop a value proposition that is going to speak to a specific segment and speak to ways that they can improve their lot in life by using your product or service. All right. So at this point, you should be thinking about your own unique value proposition. Again, if you're in the Nonprofit Utopia community, we have worksheets to help you flesh that out and get to that one or two sentence value proposition. So a question you might want to think about is, who is your ideal customer, and, what are they going through? How are you going to provide products and services that will address their needs, help them achieve what it is they're trying to achieve, help them mitigate the barriers to achievement, and make their lives better. So given all of that, what is your unique value proposition in one or two sentences? All right. So if you are a member of the Nonprofit Utopia community, we have these worksheets for you in the community. We have the value proposition canvas. We have 10 characteristics of great value propositions, a checklist. And this information, comes from Strategizer. We have the ad lib value proposition template. We have customer gains and trigger questions that you can use as a model for your own surveys, your own questionnaires for your interviews. We have customer jobs trigger questions. Again, you can tailor those for your own results. We've got customer pains trigger questions. We got gains creators trigger questions, and we have pain relievers trigger questions. Okay, so that concludes the presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to post. All righty. Leonard, it's great to see you. You're quite welcome. Um, if you have any questions, any comments, please feel free to share. If you have any experience with a social enterprise, anyone, please feel free to share. I will give you a couple moments to post any questions, any comments, any of your experiences. And if you don't have any comments or questions, we will end this video. But I'll give you a couple minutes. All righty. Well, thank you so much. Doesn't look like we have any questions or comments. I want to thank you again for participating. All right. And thank you so much for your likes and for your love. All right. Take care.